Hello, and thank you so much for your interest in submitting a 2027 Governor's Awards for the Arts nomination. I'm Katie Monahan, and I'm a communications strategist here at the Ohio Arts Council, and I also help coordinate the Governor's Awards. And in this video, I'm going to help go over some best practices for assembling a competitive Governor's Awards nomination. So, if you're watching this, you likely already have an outstanding individual or organizational nominee in mind, and you're ready to start putting together your nomination. A nomination consists of three main components. So first, we're going to ask for some basic biographical information about the nominee. So 125 words or less bio about the organization or the individual that you're nominating, and then a headshot for the individual and a logo for the organization. The next two are really the meat of your nomination, and those are the nomination narrative and your support letters. So before we dive into those, just a few general things to know about the nomination. Nominators or nominations can be submitted by either individuals or organizations. And as the nominator, you will serve as the nomination coordinator. And what that means is that you'll collect the bio and the headshot, that biographical information we just talked about. You'll also solicit and collect those support letters. And of course, you will draft the nomination narrative and then take everything all together and upload it into the Governor's Awards nomination form on the OAC's website. So in this video, we are going to talk about best practices for those two main components, the nomination narrative and your letters of support. So let's talk about that nomination narrative. So the narrative is the foundation of your nomination. This is your opportunity to introduce the nominee to the awards committee. This could be the very first time that they're hearing of them, right? And so you want to talk about not just what they've accomplished in a bulleted list, but who they are, the impact they've made through the arts, and why their work matters. Because of that, we always recommend leaning more into storytelling rather than that list, like I said. And the narrative should be 350 to 800 words, so roughly a page or so typed. Now, we do realize that it can feel rather daunting to try and sum up a lifetime worth of work, several years or even decades at this point of accomplishments in that amount of space, but I promise you it can be done. The key is to focus on the strongest examples and use them to tell a clear, compelling story. So how do you do that? Lucky for you, we've put together a few prompts to help guide you as you sit down and start thinking about what you're going to write. Now, please keep in mind, you don't have to systematically move through and answer each one of these in your nomination narrative. These are just prompts to kind of get you thinking about how you might want to frame the narrative or what angle you might want to take with it. So let's go through a few of them. First, think about what makes the nominee stand out from the crowd. What do they uniquely bring to the arts? Whether it's artistic excellence, visionary leadership, maybe it's decades of dedicated service, some great advocacy, or an innovative approach to something, or of course, a very deep commitment to their community. Think about what it is about their contributions that makes them especially worthy of recognition, and sum that up into words. Next, who benefits from the nominee's leadership in the arts? So for this one, maybe think about the people and the communities that they serve, but also what it is about their leadership that has sustained or strengthened over time. So maybe they've grown an organization, guided it through difficult periods, built a strong foundation for its future, or spent years creating opportunities for artists, audiences, staff, and their broader community. And finally, what has changed because of the nominee's work? So maybe this individual or organization has found new ways to strengthen arts education. Maybe they've built some partnerships between artists and local businesses in their communities that have really turned into this big annual thing that they do now every year for the community. Maybe they've influenced arts policy or created new opportunities to experience the arts. Something important to remember is that impact can also mean making the arts possible, right? So somebody could be doing that through philanthropy, through advocacy, as I mentioned, through volunteer service, a business supporting the arts, or an individual or organization simply giving generously of their time, talent, and resources to make the arts possible in a community. So those are just some prompts to get you started. But basically what the committee I think is looking for here is they want to know their story. So this is beyond the CV of the bulleted. Here we will, they've won this award, they've won this award. We really want to hear about them as a person or an organization and why their contributions have made a meaningful difference. This is a show, don't tell situation, right? So one big piece of advice that I can give you here is to make sure you proofread and not just for typos. So something that you definitely want to consider is making sure that several people see a draft of your nomination narrative. And ideally, that would include somebody who knows the nominee really well and also somebody who doesn't. So the person who knows them really well can help you spot important accomplishments or contexts that you may have missed. And the person who doesn't know them super well can help you decide whether the story makes sense, whether there's some holes or something that they don't quite understand about why exactly is this person or organization deserving of this award. So both of those perspectives can really help strengthen your nomination narrative and make sure it's really full and complete. We want to make sure that the committee walks away understanding why this nominee deserves to be recognized. So that is your nomination narrative. Next, we're going to talk about our support letters here. So once you have your nomination narrative drafted, it's time to think about the letters of support. Support letters are optional, but we do highly encourage them. They just make for an overall stronger nomination package. So you can include up to 3 letters, each no more than 500 words, or again, about a page, and you submit them as individual PDFs. So first tip here, a strong nomination package includes letters that add something to the story that you told in your narrative, rather than just repeating the exact same story that you told in your narrative. So when you're thinking about who to pick, that's something you want to keep in mind. So how do you decide who to pick, right? You want to think about people who can speak to different aspects of the nominee's work, their character, and their impact. So that might be a colleague who has worked alongside the nominee for a number of years and has seen them in action. It could be a community member or a parent or a student or someone who has directly benefited from the work that the nominee has done. It could be a local official or a civic leader who has seen the benefits of the nominee's work in their community for a sustained period of time. It could really be anybody who's experienced the broader impact or a very personal impact of the nominee. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about those support letter writers. And as the nominator, it can also be super helpful to share the overall themes or the focus of your nomination narrative with your letter writers. You don't need to tell them exactly what to write. We do want them to have their own words and to hear their own voices in there, but it could be helpful to give them a sense of the story that you're trying to tell and perhaps the perspective that you're hoping that they can contribute. So that way you can end up with 3 letters that complement one another and tell the full story rather than saying the same thing in 3 different ways, right? So a couple of things to keep in mind. As I mentioned, support letters have to be uploaded as PDFs and they must be written letters. We can't accept videos, hyperlinks, or any other materials like that in place of the letter. It must be written. You'll see in a different video where I go over the form for the nomination that there is a separate section where you can include links to things like social media accounts, websites, or online portfolios. But that is not the place to do it in the support letters. There's a separate place, but the support letter does need to be written. And of course, start early, give yourself enough time, give your letter writers enough time. I recommend setting your own deadline for them, at least a week, maybe at least a couple of days before the actual nomination deadline. That way you have time to collect all of the support letters, hold them up with your nomination narrative, and just see if it all makes sense together. See if there's anything missing that you may need to go back to those support letter writers and ask about, or if there's any edits that you need to make to your nomination narrative. So just some things to keep in mind. You don't want to be scrambling and trying to track down somebody on deadline day, right? All right. So that does it for our brief overview of the nomination components and what you can do to make yours stand out a little bit more. For more information, be sure to check out our other 2 videos on frequently asked questions and also the nomination form. Best of luck. My contact information is here. If you have any questions, katie.monahan@oac.ohio.gov, and we very much look forward to receiving your nomination.